What's up everyone, JD here with another everyday carry video. Hope everyone is doing well out there today. Today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. Recently I had picked up a knife that got my attention, that was really budget friendly, very affordable, very obtainable, but at the same time offering very high quality product for value. And that was very interesting to me. So that got me thinking, what is value? Value to me is how much are you getting for the money that you're putting out? And that's where I'm at today with the knives that you see here in front of you. I see these as excellent budget value knives, giving you a lot for your hard-earned money. The knives that you see on the table today that I'm going to take into comparison is the Ontario Rat 2. Pay no attention to the fact that this knife has the copper scales on them. I picked these up, they're aftermarket. We'll talk a little bit about what scales do come with the Ontario Rat 2 and a little bit when we get into the comparison. The second knife on the table is the Civivi Elementum ND2. I know they have a couple of variants out there where you can get S35 yen, so on and so forth, but we're going with their entry-level product and their entry-level offering for this particular shootout. And the last knife that I have for comparison is actually the QSP Penguin. This one is relatively new, but it is quickly making a name for itself in the budget territory, and for good reason. So before we get into anything as far as the shootout is concerned, what I want to talk about is the fact that I am not going to take in color options and blade coating and non-coating. They all three offer some level of color option, coated, uncoated, so on and so forth. So I'm going to focus on other things, and right off the top of the bat, I'm just going to take those right off the table. Those are not part of the consideration because they do all offer it. The other thing that I want to just get out of the way, a little bit of house cleaning up front, is the QSP is a China-made knife. The Civivi Elementum is a China-made knife. And the Ontario is a Tuan-made knife. So do with that information with what you will. If that's a factor for your decision, I just wanted to get that out of the way up front and be done with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the categories that I have chosen to be important for me from a budget value perspective. So let's go ahead and start with price. Right off the top of the bat, I wanted to go through the price point of each of these knives. So the Ontario Rat 2 and D2 steel right now can be had for under $38. The Civivi Elementum with the D2 steel can be had for $53. And the QSP Penguin with D2 steel can be had at $33. So right there, the winner for me is going to be the QSP Penguin. So I'm going to give them 3 points. Next highest, or next lowest, depending on how you want to look at it, is the Ontario Rat ND2, giving it 2 points. And last is going to be the Civivi Elementum with D2 at $53. So 1 point because it's the most expensive on the table. Being that all of them have D2 steel, I'm just going to go ahead and award all three with 3 points because that is an excellent steel at any price point below $50 in my opinion. It is very tough. It holds an edge very well. It does have a little bit of an issue with moisture and corrosion, which is why you see on a couple of the knives that I've had a little bit longer, I have done the acid etch, and I did tumble wash as well. You can see the stone wash there. That is to help combat the corrosion aspect. I just picked up this QSP variant, and that is why it is still in the satin finish, and it does not have any type of coating or anything to protect it from any type of moisture. But I'm also not carrying that particular one in my pocket, which I'll go over here in a little bit. So again, D2, excellent edge retention, very tough. It's a very good steel. And again, if you find it on knives at around or under 50, even under 60, it's still a really good steel option. It is a little bit tougher to sharpen, but it's not that bad. You can look up YouTube videos on how to do that, and they're really good tutorials on how to sharpen up or help maintain your edge depending on what you're using it for. Next, I want to just go through the types of grinds. I gave all of these a 1 because I feel like it depends really on what you want. The Ontario has a flat grind. It is very thin and very slicey. The flat grind carries it all the way to the top of the blade. Really good for slicing through stuff. It's going to have minimal resistance, and as you can see, this is really a slicey blade grind, and it has a really good edge. The Civivi Elementum has a hollow grind, and it is really thin behind the edge. You can kind of feel the difference when you compare these two knives, that the actual Elementum does a little bit better of a job behind the edge with the sliciness, and it ramps up really well. So you're going to, again, get very minimal resistance in your cut with these two knives. And the QSP has a flat grind, but it doesn't go all the way full to the top. It is very thin, very slicey. All of these have done a very good job. I figured 1 point because, you know, depending on what style you like as far as the grind really is going to determine to you which one of these is the winner. For me, I like all three. I think all three are very well done, and I don't have a preference with these particular knives. I don't have a preference. The blade shapes are going to be a drop point for the Ontario Rat and a drop point for the Civivi. Both drop to the point, which is the name drop point, and then the sheep's foot on the QSP. So again, depending on what it is that you want, I feel like these all just get a 1 because it is depending on how you use it and what you're doing with it. They all are very good at doing multiple things, so I feel like they all are very versatile. There's going to be folks out there that are going to argue why one's better than the other, but again, for me, for a budget knife, for general cutting purposes, these all three are probably going to suit you just fine. The next thing that I did want to talk about is actually what's in the pivot. Now, I'm going to go with the QSP first, and the QSP is going to be on a washer, brass washer, very good action. I am going to give this a 3 because of the fact that the action is superb, and if you're working in or around something that's going to get your knife dirty, it's going to likely impact this knife the least. And I say that because the dirt has no room really to get into the pivot, and it's not going to get caught up or hung up on the brass washer, preventing it from working properly as you're using it and the knife is getting dirty. Next, I'm going to talk about the Elementum. The Elementum is on bearings, so I'm also going to give this one a 3 because that provides excellent action, and the bearings are ceramic, which makes them a bit tougher than just a stainless steel bearing. Now, you can argue that as it gets dirty, it could affect the performance, but I think what really would happen as you use this, if it got dirty, it would just feel gritty. I don't honestly think that that is going to impact D2 steel or ceramic bearings. Now, the knives are all very easy to clean and maintain, and if you disagree, you could knock a point off, but I feel like because this action is so good on bearings, I still want to give it a 3 overall. Now, I did save the Ontario for last, and that is because this knife has been around a little bit longer, and it has bronze washers and nylon washers. So they're sandwiched in there, and this to me earns it a 1 because it is the least desirable pivot setup in my opinion, because the nylon can easily break down if it were to get dirty. If you were to over tighten this by accident, it can cause the nylon washers to warp, And I do feel like it does impact the action just a little bit. As you can see, it is not dropped shut. I am having to really ramp down to get that to open. And as you can see, it didn't completely open smoothly. You have to get that flick perfect. And I just feel like the other two do a much better job with the bronze washer and the ceramic bearings. So I'm giving these two a 3, and I'm giving the Ontario Rat a 1 in this instance. Let's talk a little bit about the weight of these knives. Again, I'm going to start with the QSP. The QSP with the D2 steel, the micarta scales, the steel liners, pocket clip, and hardware come in at an advertised 3.17 ounces. Very lightweight, very carryable. You're not going to feel that in your pocket. Totally acceptable. To me, anything under 4 ounces is really lightweight carry. In this instance, this feels very light and is very well done. The Civivi Elementum comes in at an even lighter 2.89 ounces, and you can feel the lightness of this knife. I honestly sometimes feel like this knife probably is closer to 2.5 ounces. It just feels lighter. I don't know that if this being under 3 ounces and this being over 3 is why you feel such a difference, but this feels lighter by far. You can tell it is really lightweight in hand. You don't feel it in the pocket, even with the print. Very well done. So I gave a 1 because this is the heaviest knife on the table in its factory form. Obviously with the copper scales on the Ontario, it's the heaviest, but we're going to pretend that this is the nylon variant. I gave the Elementum a 2, and believe it or not, the Ontario Rat 2 with the nylon scales comes in at a very lightweight 2.75 ounces, even lighter than the other two knives on the table. Very, very impressive for a stainless steel knife with the nylon. And I think the nylon is what allows it to be so much lighter. So the Ontario getting the win in that category, getting 3 full points. Again, Elementum 2, and the QSP gets 1 point for weight. While we're talking about handle materials, I do have the copper scales on the Ontario Rat 2, but the R2D2 comes with nylon, which is the least desirable and least premium material from the factory. So it did get a 1 with the nylon washers, but nylon is tough and it is going to hold up to abuse well. And there are aftermarket scales out there if you choose to go with other options, but the nylon being the less premium and less desirable material, I gave that a 1. The Elementum, as you can see here, comes in the micarta at the same price that it comes in with the G10. And I think both of those are very good materials, especially because they're done so well that it offers a grip, whether you're going with the bare hand, whether you're going with a glove. Very, very nice for gripping, looks really good, and it feels premium in hand. So I'm giving both the QSP and the Elementum a 3 for offering micarta at this price point. Very, very, very well done. Both feel really good in hand, and if they get a little bit of wet while you're using them, if you're using them to work on things, that actually causes the micarta to become more grippy on the bare hand and in glove. So very well done for these two, offering the micarta option. The Elementum does have G10 variants out there at the same price point. There are more premium versions of the Elementum out there with some more premium materials, but we're not taking those into consideration for the budget entry-level knife. All three have, as you've seen me fidget with these, liner locks, which I think is a really good lock system for a budget knife. Liner locks are not going to impede your ability to manipulate the blade when you deploy it, to manipulate the blade when you are trying to close it when you're done using it, and very safe. So for a budget knife, having a liner lock on all three they're all going to get 3 points because I really do think this is a good lock at this particular price point. Now, let's talk about carry while we're on the handles, talking about the scales and everything else. The Ontario in its stock form with the nylon allows for tip up, tip down carry, both left hand and right hand. So I gave the Ontario a 3 because with the nylon scales, which I know that looks weird, me talking about it with the copper scales only having the right tip up, but that's because I chose that option. The nylon scales, tip up, tip down, right hand, left hand, I gave it a 3. The Elementum, whether you get the G10 or the micarta version, is right hand only, tip up only carry. So because it has the least amount of options on how you can carry the knife, the Elementum in this category gets a 1. And you can see from here, the QSP has tip up, right hand and left hand, but tip up only. So I gave it a 2 because it isn't tip down. If you prefer to carry your knife that way, that is going to be a problem for you. Next, we're going to talk about the deployment method. I think that the thumb stud is probably the least in this comparison desirable deployment because of the fact that you can kind of miss that when you're trying to go for the deployment. And that to me is a factor, but it is still a really good method and it ensures that it is ambidextrous. So I did give the thumb studs for the Ontario and for the QSP 2 points, especially because the version here on the QSP is really, really good. So it would be hard, and their thumb studs are really tall. It stands up very pronounced over top of the scales. So very good job with that. I did give it a 2, but for deployment, I feel like when you're getting into a new knife or when you have a budget knife, even though it is a little bit of a nub to stick out on the design and it may take away a little bit from the sleek and the look of the knife, that the flipper tab is definitely the best deployment method in my opinion on the budget knife. I really do like that. I feel like it's consistent. I can't think of a time where I've ever went to use the flipper tab and the blade didn't deploy. So I am giving the flipper tab the 3 and the thumb studs a 2, but depending on your preference, you may disagree, and I completely understand because everyone does have a preference when it comes to this type of thing. Now, as far as value is concerned, I feel like value to me means how much you get for the amount of money that you spend. And in this instance, I think the QSP gets a 3 because at $33, which is the least expensive knife on this table, you get a 3-inch blade and a sheep foot design with D2 steel. You get very nicely done micarta scales, and you get a tip up reversible deep carry pocket clip with steel liners. This knife is phenomenal value and the action is really, really good. The jimping is very well done, excellent placement. The hand position is very neutral. It's not going to be offensive to anyone. It is 4-finger grip for my large hands, so I feel like this is going to work for a lot of people. Even if you have smaller hands, because my pinky just makes it on there. I mean, it just makes it on there. Smaller hands, this is not going to feel large in hand. This is going to be a very, very friendly knife to carry. I did give the Ontario a 2 because it's $38. It is the second cheapest knife on the table. It gives you D2 steel, stainless steel liners. It is hampered a little bit by the nylon bronze washers in the pivot. I feel like that combination is very outdated and it's easy to see that possibly getting compromised in the use. Now, have I had an issue with it? No. But I do think that is something to take into consideration. I think the nylon washers knock it down a little bit, but to me what brings it back up is the fact that the nylon is tip up, tip down, reversible for right hand and left hand carry. So if you are left-handed, this knife probably is going to be a little bit more easy to use, but the QSP does flip the pocket clip, allowing you to carry that right hand or left hand, and coming in at a few dollars less but giving you D2 and micarta is why the QSP got 3, and to me the R2D2 gets 2 points. Now understand, I am giving the Civivi Elementum 1 point in this category, and that is not because it is a bad knife. Not at all. This knife is very well done. Came in centered, very lightweight, the lightest out of the bunch. I take that back. The second lightest out of the bunch, the Ontario, is lighter with the nylon settings. I'm thinking about my copper settings. I apologize. My copper scales, but the nylon scales on the Ontario make it the lightest. So it's the second lightest. It does give you ceramic ball bearings, but again, depending on your preference, you might want the bronze washers, you might want the ceramic ball bearings. The limitation of only being able to carry right hand and tip up only knock it down a little bit for me as well. And finally, D2 steel and micarta scales at $53 now is too much money. This is too much money because QSP has come in and thrown down the gauntlet, giving you the same D2 steel, micarta scales, which is a premium feel, at $33. So Civivi, I feel like QSP has put you on notice. Damn! You were a little bit high from the get-go, but I could say you had at least the premium material and you had the bearings in the pivot to give you the action of your knife that more premium feel. But there is a new kid on the block, and to me, the QSP is the best value budget pocket knife that you can get as of the making of this video.
He's allowing Mike Tyson to trap him in the corner.
So my totals, I ended up having QSP with 27 points being the winner. I ended up having the Ontario Rat at 24 points coming in second, and the Civivi Elementum with 23 points coming in last. Really, what hurt the Civivi is the fact that you are paying $53 for the same steel that the other two knives give you, and QSP has matched the premium material that you get on your scales, whereas you have the plastic but the lightweight on the Rat. So that is my opinion. Let me know what you think. Any of these knives on a budget are going to really help you. If you don't want to spend a lot of money on your pocket knife, you can't go wrong with any of these three knives. If you're trying to do a build with your knife where you maybe want to go and get yourself a flashlight, or maybe you want to get yourself a Swiss Army knife to carry with it, or a pen, or if you're just looking for a secondary knife that you just want to throw into an organizer and you want to throw this in your backpack and not think about it, these are all excellent options. You cannot go wrong with any of these knives. Which one would you pick? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.